Welcome to my channel Tech Set Go. When people think of Apple, the first products that come to mind are usually the flashy flagships. The iPhone, the MacBook Pro, the iPad Pro, or even the Apple Watch. But quietly in the background, there's been another Apple product that has become a central part of millions of living rooms. One that might not get the same headlines, but has built a reputation for stability, polish, and seamless ecosystem integration. The Apple TV 4K. Now, in 2025, Apple is preparing to give this unassuming black box one of its biggest refreshes in years. And according to insiders, leaks, and supply chain whispers, the Apple TV 2025 edition isn't just going to be a simple spec bump. It might redefine how Apple approaches the streaming box market altogether, talking about a price drop that could shake up the industry, a performance leap thanks to Apple Silicon, and a new wireless chipset that could transform smart home control. So, buckle up, because in this deep dive, we're going to break down everything we know so far. The design, the chip, the gaming potential, the network upgrades, the smart home possibilities, and yes, the release date and pricing. By the end of this, you'll know exactly why the Apple TV 2025 might be the most important streaming device Apple has ever released. Apple TV. A quick look at its evolution. To understand why this year's Apple TV matters so much, you need a bit of context. Apple doesn't refresh the Apple TV on a strict schedule the way it does with the iPhone. Instead, the Apple TV has seen updates at irregular intervals. Sometimes 2 years apart, sometimes 3 or more. The current Apple TV 4K model launched in 2022, and it was a modest but important update. Apple added the A15 Bionic chip, the same one used in the iPhone 13 lineup, gave the box support for HDR10+, switched the Siri remote to USB-C charging, and lowered the price. It wasn't revolutionary, but it made the Apple TV 4K more appealing, especially to people who were tired of Amazon Fire TV or Roku boxes that felt clunky by comparison. But here's the thing, that was 3 years ago. And in the fast-moving world of chips, graphics, streaming services, and smart homes, 3 years is an eternity. The 2025 Apple TV refresh isn't just overdue, it's arriving at a time when Apple is facing competition. Not only from other streaming boxes, but also from gaming consoles, smart displays, and even hybrid devices. Apple TV 2025 design, the same outside, all new inside. Let's start with the design because this is where people often expect a big change. But if you were hoping for a radical new look, prepare for disappointment. Or depending on your perspective, relief. According to multiple sources, the Apple TV 2025 model is going to look almost identical to the 2022 version. Same small matte black square, same minimalist Apple logo, same tuck it behind your TV and forget about it aesthetic. Apple's philosophy here is simple. If it's not broken, don't fix it. And honestly, that makes sense. The Apple TV isn't meant to be a showpiece. It's not like an iMac that sits on your desk or a MacBook that you pull out in public. It's a quiet utility device. Once it's connected to your television, you rarely see it again. Apple already made it smaller and lighter in previous generations, and any further slimming would bring little benefit. So, while the design stays familiar, what matters is what's happening inside the box. And this is where things get very interesting. The Apple TV 2025 chipset, A17 Pro power. Right now, the Apple TV 4K runs on the A15 Bionic, which was a solid upgrade at the time, but the gap between the A15 and what Apple has on the market now is enormous. Enter the A7 Pro, Apple's most advanced smartphone chip to date, built on TSMC's cutting-edge 3nMTA process. The A17 Pro isn't just about efficiency, it's about bringing hardware-accelerated ray tracing and console-class gaming performance to Apple devices. On the iPhone 15 Pro, this chip has already proven itself by running AAA titles like Resident Evil 4 Remake and Death Stranding, games that used to be unthinkable on a smartphone. Now imagine that level of performance in your living room. Hooked up to a 65-inch 4K display with proper controller support, zero fan noise, and Apple's ecosystem polish. Suddenly the Apple TV isn't just a streaming device anymore. It's a stealth console. And this might be exactly what Apple is aiming for. Apple TV gaming. A quiet revolution. For years, people dismissed the Apple TV as a gaming device. Sure, it supported Apple Arcade, and yes, you could pair a controller, but the performance just wasn't there to compete with consoles. That changes with the A17 Pro. If Apple does ship the 2025 Apple TV with this chip, it means you'll be able to play console-level games on a silent $100 box. Titles that demand ray tracing, higher frame rates, and advanced GPU pipelines will suddenly become playable on a device smaller than most routers. Of course, there's a caveat. The A17 Pro is expensive to manufacture, and Apple has historically been cautious about overinvesting in Apple TV hardware. There's a real chance Apple might instead use the A16 Bionic, the iPhone 15's chip, or even a variant of the A18, which is expected to debut in the iPhone 16 lineup. Either way, what's clear is that the Apple TV 2025 is getting a serious graphics and performance upgrade. It means smoother streaming, faster navigation, better app performance, and yes, gaming potential that goes far beyond anything the Apple TV has offered before. The Proxima chip, Apple's secret weapon for smart homes. Now, let's move on to what might be the most underrated feature of the new Apple TV, the custom wireless chipset. Cinemed Proxima. This is Apple's first in-house wireless controller for the Apple TV, and it could be a Gapsima. Chip is expected to bring Wi-Fi 7 support for those not keeping up with the alphabet soup of wireless standards. Wi-Fi 7 is the next big leap after Wi-Fi 6E. It offers massive bandwidth improvements, lower latency, better multi-device handling, and higher stability. In practical terms, that means faster 4K HDR streaming, fewer buffering issues, and smoother connections for everything in your smart home. Proxima is also set to upgrade Bluetooth to version 5.3, which improves efficiency, range, and stability. Perfect for AirPods, controllers, or any Bluetooth accessory you connect. And of course, Apple isn't abandoning Matter support, the new smart home standard. In fact, with Proxima, the Apple TV 2025 could become one of the most responsive and powerful smart home hubs on the market, syncing your lights, locks, cameras, and thermostats faster than ever. In other words, Apple isn't just selling you a streaming box, they're selling you the brain of your smart home. Apple TV pricing under $100. Now let's talk about what might be the biggest shocker of all, the price. For as long as it's existed, the Apple TV has carried a premium. While you could buy a Roku or Fire TV stick for under $50, the Apple TV always started closer to $129, or even $179 in the past. It was the luxury streaming box aimed at people who valued performance and the Apple ecosystem. But according to reliable supply chain analysts, Apple is about to change strategy. The Apple TV 2025 could launch for under $100. That's right, premium Apple product priced to compete directly with Roku, Fire TV, and Cast. If Apple really does this, it will completely reset the streaming box landscape. For years, people avoided the Apple TV simply because it was too expensive compared to alternatives. At $90, none or less, that barrier disappears. Suddenly, the Apple TV isn't just for Apple diehards. It becomes a mainstream option. And if Apple does pair that lower price with the A17 Pro chip and Proxima Wireless, then this might just be the best value Apple product in years. Release date. When to expect the Apple TV 2025. So, when is all this happening? The timeline points to a late 2025 release window. That means anywhere between September and December, lining up with Apple's usual fall hardware season. The 2022 Apple TV was announced quietly via press release in October. And Apple could take the same approach this year. Alternatively, it could be announced alongside the iPhone 17 lineup in September, especially if Apple wants to highlight gaming and smart home features. Either way, expect the Apple TV 2025 to hit shelves before the holiday season. Perfect timing for Apple to capitalize on gift buyers. Apple's bigger vision beyond the box. Before we wrap up, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture, because the Apple TV 2025 isn't just